Gavin Roth here with episode 30 of the Influencers of Sponsorship Marketing, a Roth Revenue podcast. I joined a Zoom networking event on August 27th with fellow members of the Sponsorship Marketing Council of Canada. And a few of us were reflecting on the last time we were together in person. It was March 11th, and the country was starting to retreat to home offices as the pandemic was in full court press mode. 2 days later, it was official. And here we are, almost 6 months later. We've been forced to change the way we live and work. Brands have had to rethink how they show up, and partnerships have been tested and reimagined. My guests on this episode are well positioned to talk to these opportunities and challenges. I'm joined by Ashley Curran, Associate Vice President of Community Investment at Canadian Tire Corporation. She is responsible for driving corporate social responsibility programs, which includes managing the brand and fundraising in support of Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities. And Francis Dumais, partner and co-founder at Elevent, a leading sponsorship marketing agency that counts Canadian Tire among its blue chip clients. We discuss the respective journeys and the people who inspired them along the way. Ashley gives insights into how Canadian Tire responded to the pandemic. We discuss how the need for social responsibility has changed the types of discussions CTC is having with their sponsorship properties, and the way CTC's partnerships have had to be reimagined. We talk about how Canadian Tire used to measure and evaluate their sponsorships, think really big Excel files, and how some innovative software tools from Elevent, with some really cool names, have dramatically improved that process. Ashley and Francis share their thoughts on trends in sponsorship marketing. We discuss our shared love for the Olympics and the Tire's inspirational Olympic campaigns. And as always, we wrap with professional development advice. I hope you enjoy. And for more episodes of the Influencers of Sponsorship Marketing podcast, follow me on LinkedIn, visit Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, or check out rothrevenue.com. Ashley, when I was thinking about this conversation and your business, a few thoughts came to mind. And one word that kept coming back to me was community. That despite your immense size and scope, the business, Canadian Tire, is a brand that's really an essential part of communities across this country. And your role has the word community in it. So
it does, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the journey to this role, and more about your responsibilities in this role. And again, and obviously, thank you for doing this.
Oh, happy to be here. It's and community's certainly been in a spotlight in light of everything going on in the world right now. A lot of pressure on our team to really step up. Honestly, I don't know, in terms of how I got here, it's definitely not a linear path. I have always had a huge passion for sport. I actually interned at the Molson Honda Indy. It's gone through a few name changes.
Yeah, I think you're the first person who's bridged those. Yeah, Molson Honda.
Like, I don't know I honestly,
I agree. Yeah.
It's gone through so many, but the Indy down in Toronto, and for me, I started my career in public relations and communications. I started at the Honda Indy as a co-op in the media office. I then went and spent 10 years bouncing around agencies, moving into more brand and marketing functions. But I was always really fortunate to touch on social responsibility, and I always got to work in sport in some capacity. So help bring the International Dragon Boat Federation's Club Crew Championships here to Toronto. That would have been back in,
wow,
I think it was 2010. It's a long time ago. Worked on the Toronto Expo bids, and my boss at the time did a lot of work with the Olympic bid committees, trying to bring the Olympics to Toronto. And then we were talking, earlier about this. Olympics has always been a huge passion of mine. Most Canadians are big fans of Team Canada, and I grew up in a household with my grandparents both worked in broadcast and sport. And so for me, chasing a job where I could, even be on the periphery of the Olympics was always a North Star for me. And, having a grandmother who's one of the first sports producers in Canada really helped empower, embolden me, even as a female in sport, to want to pursue that. So I, every time I changed jobs in agency, you spend 2-3 years and you move up, you take a job to move up somewhere else. That agency would win a client who was an Olympic partner. It happened to me 3 times, no joke. And at that stage in my career, I knew I wanted to go on the client side and work for a corporation or a big brand. And I wanted to do it in the community space. And so I went and did my MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, I had an opportunity to work with an old boss who was leading the sport partnerships team at Canadian Tire. And that's how I started at Canadian Tire. And I started on the sport partnerships team. And, it's 6 years later and have progressed within that team. And in a role now where, the last 2 years I've been leading our community efforts, which is everything from, helping manage the Jumpstart brand and fundraising for a corporate charity, to building grassroots sports programs, finding innovative ways of leveraging our sport portfolio with more of a community lens, and helping define what that future state looks like. So it's been a wild ride, but certainly not a linear one.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have ended up in a better place.
No, that's awesome. And who was that boss? Who was that person?
Kim Saunders, who's now, she's the VP partnerships and community partnerships. I'm not actually sure which way we go.
Yeah, very well regarded executive in the industry, Kim, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her a few times. So
she helped bring the Olympics to the Tire back in, I think that was 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's still funny, isn't it? That a brand that, like maybe this off script, but what was the root of, the genesis of the business that it was called Canadian Tire? I don't know if many people, because it is so much more, yet it's always maintained that name. Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool that it hasn't lost its original identity, but people doesn't seem to phase consumers.
Yeah, it's a 97 years old.
Wow.
So we're marching towards our 100th. And so it's a heritage brand in this country. It's interwoven into the fabric of who we are as Canadians. And yeah, I mean, I think that, the founder's daughter is still an active role. Martha is, still very actively engaged both with the business and with the charity. Love it. It's phenomenal to see.
Yeah, great. And were there some people along the way who kind of, motivated you, mentored you, inspired you to kind of, keep going? You mentioned obviously your grandparents, which I think is cool, your grandmother.
Yeah, I mean, my grandparents worked at rival networks in Canada in sport, CBC and CTV respectively. But my grandmother she just passed away 6 months ago, so maybe it's timely.
Sorry.
But
wow.
She had a big fulfilling, she had a long road. Did some amazing things. But I think having strong female role models, especially in this industry, gives you the the power to kind of push through and pursue a path here. It's not always easy to break through. I think other mentors, oh my God, there's so many to list from. You don't move up in a professional capacity without an army of people supporting you.
Yeah, well said.
And I am so fortunate to have had some phenomenal bosses. Kim has been my boss. Probably this is the 3rd time. So she's keeping me around. So that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But Kim's been a really great mentor. And, she worked with me early on. She hired me at my 2nd agency and was a lot greener, a lot younger then. And, it's an absolute pleasure to work with her today in a different environment and in a different capacity. We've both progressed so much in our careers. So you need leaders above you that are invested in your growth and development. And, at Canadian Tire, we're surrounded by so many. We're really fortunate.
Good. Great. Well said. Francis, it's been a pleasure getting to know you better over the last year, 2 years, and we actually, a funny little side story is we had recorded for the listeners a podcast just prior to the break. And then we were just going to find a timely window to release it. And then the pandemic hit, and obviously we changed our focus. So it's great to have you finally doing this and in this context. And maybe just share your journey. How did you get inspired to pursue a career in sponsorship marketing? And then tell the listeners more about what Elevent does.
Yeah, well, like many in this business, I think I stumble onto sponsorship. A lot of people start from either advertising or PR or experiential, and discover sponsorship. I was at school. I was enlisted and I was doing my master's degree in marketing. And I was really passionate about Formula One still to this day, but I wanted to do my thesis on Formula One. I just didn't know what subject. And it became evident that, sponsorship was the driving force behind a lot of the revenues of the sport. So it was not like something cast aside or nice to have. Like, sponsorship really drives on-track performance in Formula One. So it became obvious that it was the angle to take. So I did 2 years to write the thesis. I was very fortunate to be able to travel, met with sponsorship managers at Ferrari and Renault, like seasoned professionals. Went to the Australian Grand Prix, talked to the folks here in Montreal.
Oh.
So yeah, it was the start of my career, and I followed with my first role in sponsorships at Lotto Quebec. So they were heavily one of the biggest sponsors at the time, sponsoring more than 120 events in the province alone. And I had a very cool project working with sports properties, so all of their sports portfolio, to have a more commercial partnership than what they were doing on the community side with the Lotto Quebec brand. So we brought in products. So that was a good project. And then I, similar to Ashley, moved to the agency side for a bit to work on that account. And then went back to the client side, managing sponsorships.
Make up your mind, Francis. Come on. Yes.
A lot of people don't bounce back. I'm impressed by that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't go between. You pick. Yeah, that's unique.
Yeah, I bounced back again because we found Elevent after that. But yeah, TELUS, I was fortunate to have a lot of freedom, which allowed me to build, to change our portfolio, to start measuring sponsorships, and that was kind of the route. We founded Elevent in 2013 with my former boss at the agency, and the idea behind it was to create a software that would value sponsorships automatically.
Fancy that, yeah.
And go through different Excel sheets and whatnot. So the
Excel sheets. Hey, listen, I always say, out of the suite, there's got to be a personality profile exercise that says, out of Microsoft Office's suite of programs, which is your favorite? And I would say Excel for me. I don't know what that says about me, maybe boring and data driven, but I love Excel. So I will always be an advocate of Excel.
Hilarious.
Yes. What would you be, Ashley?
I would not. You know what? I love the insights that Excel generates, and I love having people on my team that can use it through all its power.
Yeah.
I do not want to spend any time in Excel at all. I would be, if you had to put me in Microsoft Suites, I would probably be PowerPoint for sure. But even that's an imperfect tool. But I am definitely a visual person.
Yeah, cool. So Francis, back to your
Francis,
Excel.
are you an Excel? You're an Excel guy, right?
Yeah, I have to say I am.
All right, cool. Yeah. So the need for measurement, and you started using Excel, and then continue from there. I know how much you guys have innovated.
Well, the insight for Elevent was when Jay, my business partner, and I were working on the agency side, and we had a lot of properties come in and ask for valuation. It was just too expensive for them to get that agency support. So we thought, let's automate that whole process and make it accessible. So that was the initial idea. However, that software was a total flop. Not that it didn't work, but people would use it and then they would call us immediately. Like, the value is great, what do I do with it? Or the value is not there, what can I do to improve it? So from there, we basically built consulting. So we built the agency because we were getting so many calls. So the software is very much a part of the business today, and we built, now we have a suite of solutions of the Canadian Tire.
And we're going to certainly talk about that because it's a topic that's always interested me, and we're both very involved with Sponsorship Marketing Council, and just over the years being associated with the SMCC and just the constant discussion around the need for measurement and the lack of consistency, and it's still amazing to me that, and it doesn't mean we have to have one industry specific tool, but just to see what you guys have done, I think is super impressive. And to see a brand like Canadian Tire embrace that and really use that to optimize their portfolio. It's a good discussion. So I look forward to diving into that a little bit more. Mentors on your side, inspirations on your side?
When I did do the thesis, I was collecting data, was doing a lot of interviews with sponsorship professionals, and I met with Tom Moser, who basically created the British American racing team. He was working at British American Tobacco, and it was a very bold move at the time from a company that wanted to go public. They wanted to influence investors as well as consumers. So he has an amazing. He's an amazing marketer. Had a chance to keep in touch with him after that.
That's cool. Let's pivot to the obviously, goes without saying, we're 6 months almost into a global pandemic. There's so many other cries for social responsibility. But I know at this stage, a lot more has been kind of in place around the response to the pandemic. So Ashley, you guys really stepped up, and it's called for, brands with great size and scope have great responsibility, and you've put your foot forward. Talk about your response to the pandemic and your support of frontline workers, and a little bit more about that.
Traditionally, we do a lot of our community support investments through our charity, through Jumpstart, but sport was on hold. All right. And you weren't really even allowed out of your house, let alone you weren't going to be going and playing hockey at the end of March, right? The sport was on hold. And so for us, supporting our frontline workers was a natural fit. And there's a lot of other brands that did that were doing that too, which was great. So for us, we just wanted to go one step further and how can we really make a big difference here? So we made some financial donations. We gave $1 million to Red Cross and to United Way each, and that helped get funding out of the gate into communities in the greatest need during that crisis. And then we worked closely with our merch teams, and we pulled product off shelf, and we helped source more PPE, and we got it out and turned it out as quickly as we could to organizations across the country that were in need. So we actually, within a week and a half from getting the green light from our executive team, we made a commitment of $5 million, 3 of which towards PPE that we were able to then push out to the marketplace within weeks. And it was amazing. We actually called Francis during this time because we were in the process of, fortunately, launching what I believe is called, I think you guys call it Spot. Is that your intake tool? Yeah. Did I get it right? Yeah, perfect.
It's Brick Road.
Sorry, Brick Road. You have so many. We can edit this out. So we were fortunate enough to actually be working with Francis through their program, Brick Road, which is going to be our consumer-facing sponsorship intake tool online. We were just about to hit, green light it, post it on our website, and then future sponsees, donors, community partners that want to look for a partnership with Canadian Tire can go online, fill it out, and we'll evaluate. and give the yay or nay.
Yeah.
So we actually, the biggest question was, well, how do we go out to Canadians and get, find out where these products need to go, right?
Yeah.
Because
And I would imagine you're getting flooded with requests for
we're
help.
getting requests
And how do
from
you sift through that, right?
all of it. I mean, it's operational. It's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
Supporting the healthcare community in this country, it was, first and foremost where we wanted to be. But they're provincially mandated, or not regulated. They're provincially operated, which means they all have different protocols, and there's no one point of contact, right? You have to work with all of them. So for us, rather than go out, which we traditionally do, we would go out and find the partners and do the deals and fulfill them. This case, we just did an open call, to Canada. If you're a frontline worker in healthcare and community, come to our website, apply online. We made the intake form so simple. Elevent, what they're so great about is they really do think of everything. And so we have 3 products with them, and Brick Road was gonna, helps us fulfill. We manage like over probably 800, 1,000 requests a year for sponsorships.
Wow.
Brick Road was going to help us filter all that, and it still will. But what we did was we took this glorious tool that we're about to launch, and we scrapped it right down. We took it down to like, instead of like, a 30 question application, I think we ended up with like 6 questions.
That's
because
great.
we wanted it to be fast.
Yeah, exactly. In a time of crisis, people would just don't have the capacity, emotional capacity to go through. Yeah, Francis, I want you to jump in a sec on a little bit more about Brick Road and how that helps. Why it was designed and how it helps here. Just kind of expand a little bit on what Ashley said. Ashley, when I, as a consumer and in the industry and wearing a marketing lens sometimes as well as a revenue lens, I followed how everybody jumped. A lot of brands jumped quickly with messages, and some brands took a more thoughtful approach and weren't like, knee jerk in their approach. They were, and I paid attention to you guys in particular. You weren't necessarily the first out of the gate, and I thought that's smart because you must have been just all thinking very carefully and thoughtfully about how you want to show up and what's the best way to do it. And when you did, it was tremendously impactful. I just wonder, was there ever a struggle about, do we come out like super early or do we just get this right?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I think all brands face this right now. In marketing these days, everything's happening in real time, right? Everything breaks in social media, and there's so much pressure to jump on the bandwagon right away. And I think sometimes the situation warrants a really quick response. And I think sometimes the situation warrants a more calculated, thoughtful response. There was mixed opinions in-house. We're in the middle of a crisis, a global pandemic, one that I don't think anyone in our generation or the last 2 generations has seen at this scale, certainly not in the modern world that we live in. And so, there's no guidebook, there's no roadmap, right? You have business continuity strategies for how you want to mitigate risk in your businesses, and you have, your toolbox of things you can do in community aid. And we do a lot of work with the Red Cross on disaster relief, but it's always so isolated and it's so local, right? And it's in that moment in time, and it's pretty simple when you've got fires in, Fort McMurray to be like, okay, let's go and get water and blankets and out there. And we know exactly what we need to do, and we can turn that around in lightning speed. Yeah.
Francis, talk about Brick Road, since that was, Ashley and the team used it. Just what was that designed to do? And, how do your perspective on how it helped in this case?
Yeah, well, it was great to see people's response to the initiative. You guys received a lot of requests really, really quickly.
Really fast. Yeah, oh my God, that was insane. The first 24 hours, we were all having panic attacks, like really excited to be able to okay, it's working, and the site didn't go down. We didn't know what demand was going to be. We had no idea. No
Yeah,
idea.
we braced for a very large amount of requests. But to your question, Gavin, so it was built because nowadays there are so many people looking for sponsorship dollars. It's non-for-profits, it's smaller organizations, and there's so many like great properties out there. So the tool was built to do two things, basically to automate that whole process so you wouldn't miss anyone. So any people applying to the platform will receive a response instead of using emails to manage that. But also to be able to find the diamond in the rough. So if you have a questionnaire that is tailored to your sponsorship policy and objectives, you can actually look at the number of points that the properties who apply for a sponsorship will get. And if it's aligned with your sponsorship policies and your objectives, you will find those properties.
Is it a like would that be almost like a keyword? It's picking up on what's in their proposal, their submission. How does that match up with the criteria and the questions? And it just has an algorithm that finds those commonalities.
Yeah, and it's really built as a custom tool. So all of our clients are very different. All the questionnaires are different. The weightings of the questions are different.
Sure.
So it's built that way. And after that, you can automate a lot of that process and save tremendous amount of time by managing things centrally on the cloud.
Cool. That's great. Ashley, pivoting a little bit here, this need and demand and call for social responsibility obviously changes the types of conversations, discussions you're having with your sponsorship properties. Talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, listen, sports always had this power of unifying everyone. I think, Nelson Mandela's known for, speaking about that so passionately. Nothing unites
I was born
people.
in Johannesburg, and
Were you really?
I have great admiration for the man, and I tell everybody my favorite sporting moment was when the Springboks won the '95 Rugby World Cup. And
Were you in?
My wife and I both are from South Africa, and we were here watching it. She was crying, and just to see that unifying moment and how he donned the Springbok jersey and used it to bring black and white together, and it was just, and the team cooperating by winning. On home soil. It was just a magical story. So they should make a movie of that one day.
Maybe they could feature Matt Damon in it. That would be, that could be interesting.
Great idea. Yes. Yeah. So back to Nelson Mandela.
Well, I mean, I think you want to go back to a really perfect example of using sport to unify people, right? And around social justice. I think, he's one of the greats in that space, and it's a proof point that I think there's an I use the word authenticity all the time, but it's in community, it's so important.
One question then, Francis, I'd love your perspective on this topic is what I've noticed, and I do a lot of work advising and helping properties, and obviously without the fans in the stadium and the ability to activate partnerships in real in an analog fashion, they have had to pivot to what brands are pivoting to, which is more social digital means. Have you seen that shift? Have you talked to the properties and just about what are you guys doing property to shift to digital and social, and how can we attach ourselves to that, back to your word, in an authentic way?
Mm-hmm. As Ashley was mentioning, sport resumed and they still have TV exposure. Montreal is the festival capital of North America. We had festivals from May to September, almost nonstop. So these guys are hurting. Jazz Fest and Just the Laughs did virtual events. And those properties that have been around for a little bit probably didn't put forward digital content as much and the last couple of years. So some of them are playing catch up, but it's an opportunity for them to create new online properties and online content. So it was often an afterthought. You're negotiating a sponsorship deal and you're putting a few Facebook posts in the agreement, but now it will become central and maybe a silver lining for the industry to really step up in that domain.
Yeah, perfect. Talk about both of you, just how Canadian Tire Corporation uses software platforms to help track and enhance your sponsorship portfolio, in particular, sticking with this theme of your relationship with sponsorship properties. And I know Elevent is such a leader in this space, so I'll let both of you comment.
Yeah, I would say, sing Elevent's praises on this one. We were operating in Excel before we brought Elevent on in a big way. I don't think a lot of people on the partnerships team, particularly, I heard a lot about Excel for a good part of a year. So you weren't
trying to measure it in PowerPoint. You were okay with Excel now. All right.
Well, actually, the dashboard was in PowerPoint. But all the metrics were in Excel.
Yeah.
The Excel docs were 3 tabs for each brand by property. So because a lot of our deals are family of companies, there are multiple brands within the deals.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of complexity to how we have all that data captured. So, for the Maple Leafs, we would end up with 12, 15 tabs of data. And then you multiply that by a portfolio of any, 20, 30 properties, and then, another half dozen athletes, and trying to figure out where athletes fit in all of this. It was amazing because we built this kind of proprietary way of measuring success based on metrics that matter to us, but not necessarily.
So this was something that was
industry.
Born in the company, started by some team or somebody that just kind of grew and grew over the years and was adopted.
So in 2015, we our audit committee, the board, our audit committee asked the partnerships team to come up with a better measure for success for ROI. Yeah. And that project landed on my desk when I was a manager as a partnership. So I was the person tasked with trying to make this happen.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, it took honestly 1.5 years, 2 years. Did a lot of work with some of our agency partners at the time, did a lot of just nerded out on research. And I think being an outsider to sponsorship specifically in that moment of time was advantageous because you're just looking at it fresh perspective. And so that's where we netted out, was this behemoth in Excel, but it worked really well. And I know it worked really well because when we went to find an agency to help us take it to that next level, move into a technology space that takes all the human error out and allows for better reporting. That's the real value of an insights tool, when everyone can use it, and it's a lot easier to pull results from it. We actually asked Elevent and a few other agencies to do an evaluation, and we paid them for their time and did an evaluation of a property that we were actually going into a renewal for anyways. And we then we had 4 agencies participate, and we compared their evaluations against our internal evaluation. And Elevent actually came the closest of the 4. So they were right. And our scorecard tool was very conservative intentionally because we had to justify our reporting and success metrics. We have to go up, to our financial team, to like our CFO, to demonstrate the value these long-term deals are making. And so we go conservative because it's a stronger case to make.
Yeah.
And
well, define conservative in that regard. Are you putting like a lower value on them, or is that what you're saying there?
I would say conservative in terms of a lot of the metrics you use are, they're vanity metrics. They're impression based, and then you put financial values against those rates. Yeah. Our rate card was probably their biggest weakness in our scorecard because there's so many other inputs. This is what Elevent helped clean up for us. There's so many industry sources on how, which metrics you want to use to quantify whether it's TV or social, if it's Twitter or Facebook, and, so those costs per clicks, and how do you want to quantify all of those pieces? And we tried to measure everything. That was probably our biggest mistake. We tried to do it all, but you have to do everything and make it overly complex.
Yeah, start there.
To distill it down to what really matters to you. So that's what I mean by conservative. If our agency was saying, well, it's 5 cents per click, we would probably go in at, 3 cents.
Gotcha.
Because some of the numbers seem so inflated out of the gate.
Right.
And then the other, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
Well, let's just say the other thing too is, typical, you guys are the data people, but, garbage in, garbage out. So if we're getting valuations from a lot of our partners who are constantly trying to sell us on the value they bring, which is their job, a lot of the metrics they're using, in our opinion, we found were really inflated. Their valuation of a rink board may have been 2 or 3 times what we actually felt that value to be. The challenge that we had was, again, there were a lot of different people in that moment in time back in, this was 2016, 2017, that could they had different valuation tools for that rink board. And I think what's been great is when we brought Elevent on board, we felt that we liked the integrity of the reporting and the rate cards. Love that they actually go, and I'll pass it over because this is really, Francis, this is your space, but it's so thorough. It's very easy to defend the valuations that they give us. And we felt that they were, conservative based on others that were sharing, probably the most realistic.
Well, I know the real reason now. You've given it away, that you hired Elevent because the other agencies would have been telling you to spend more on your partnerships than Elevent. So shame on you for it's all comes back to money.
Always comes back to money.
Yeah, no, integrity and philosophy, it seemed, was a key alignment point. So that makes a lot of sense, and doesn't surprise me as I've gotten to know Francis. He's a guy that oozes both, so I'm sure their process is rooted in that. So Francis, what tools were involved in that process?
It's the valuation tool we call Cake Mix. But first of all,
you got great names, eh? Like Brick Road, Cake Mix. You'll have to explain the genesis that. Yeah.
You can't. Honestly, my team talks to me all the time about Cake Mix, and I'm like, "Where you guys like Duncan and Hines? Like you guys are bakers now?" So no, they're great.
Yeah, we're in entertainment space. Even if our products are a little geeky, we want to make fun names. But no, right off the bat, we're really impressed with Ashley's team and what they did on the measurement front. A lot of companies talk about measurement, but very few have a structure in place, and it was amazing to see. And I think it has to be part of the culture to measure everything and do reporting and make sure that you're spending the right amount in the right place. But yeah, the scorecards were amazing. And to Ashley's point, we were able to put the data into our platform, which also centralized the information, because when you're working with a team of a few people using their Excel sheets on their computer, it's like you're going to centralize in one place.
It's like
in
15
real time.
People.
Yeah.
15 people. It's not like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Plus, you guys do a great job too at evaluating a different moment in time, pre-season and post-season, because obviously things change. You can have different assets being activated through the season. So it's a great practice to look at the before and after.
The big thing in evaluation, could be sample of one, but I don't think I'm alone in this, is the impression side and the media, whether it's traditional or social, is, you can wrestle that task to the ground in a fairly logical, linear fashion once you agree on where you're pulling, to your point, Ashley, the data points from. It's the intangibles that drive everybody nuts, right? And Francis, maybe speak to your views on how do you measure that, because that's where you tend to see a pretty wide range, especially when it's a property negotiating with a brand and the agencies advising the brand, there's wild differences in philosophies at play there.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned I was on the agency side before, and both myself and my business partner, Jay, saw a lot of different tools. And I think the Achilles heel was really, to your point, intangibles. So we wanted to build a very solid methodology to back it up. So we scanned about 20 years of academic paper and sponsorship, and that's probably my geeky sponsorship background during my thesis. But we were able to use scales that were tested and to have an impact on sponsorship outcomes, and we use that into building a unique methodology. So instead of having 5 to 10 questions to measure intangibles, we have about 50. So there are different variables that built into a larger model, but we feel it's a stronger process, and we believe a lot in those softer metrics. The valuations of assets are one thing, but you have to have good fit. You have to have relevance to your brand, and the tool allows you to customize valuation to your brand. And Canadian Tires have a few of them, so it's interesting to see which.
We love the customization. I think for us, that was, again, that kind of what sold us in with Elevent, because we felt really confident with the tangible metrics. And to your point, Gavin, that there's some logical, we've been doing that piece of it for a long time in this industry. For intangibles, how do you put a value on exclusivity, right?
Right.
Because you're paying a premium for it. So that's not always, sometimes, how do you put a value on keeping your competitive set away from benefiting?
And that is different in the business you're in than it might be, let's say, for a company that's in, sells liquor or sells food delivery services.
That's right. Right. I think that we use, then they use their partnerships for different things too. So they often can tie their partnerships directly to sales. We often can't, but there's huge value to us in the association and being, in, not right now in all those arenas, but being in all those places where our customers are spending time. There's value in having our logos up in those arenas, and with that, using that IP in our commercials. But for us, constantly, it's been the biggest pain point for the last 4 or 5 years within our team, is having those sound bites and headlines in metrics, in math, that we can then share, because we are a very data-driven organization. We can then share that back to some of our brand marketing teams, some of our executive teams. When you have when you've got a large portfolio with multi-year commitments, you always have that spotlight on you because it's numbers, right? We're talking about, where the dollars are. And I think Francis's team, they do such a great job. We had 10 questions to drive the intangible score. So the fact that they've gone even more and nerded out even harder than we did, I think gave us a lot of confidence in what they were doing.
Good. Yeah, it's fascinating. We could spend probably an episode alone on just valuation. Why don't we pivot to trends? I'd love your perspective, both of you, on trends you're seeing in the space of sponsorship marketing. Even before the pandemic, I know the pandemic, I guess, has really changed the way we approach it, but there will be a time after, and there was a time before. So it doesn't matter what lens you use, but just trends that you guys are noticing.
Francis, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I've seen, obviously before the crisis, but traditionally it was either you're in sports or music or fashion. The lines are getting blurred now, and look at what RBC is doing with music or with OVO. So it's a blend of fashion, of music, of even a B2B event. So it's really interesting to see to see those coming together.
Yeah, you guys put out a great piece. It's a couple times a year, relevant when the magazine, or how often do you send that out?
It depends on how much time we have, but
Because it's a very comprehensive, beautifully written digital magazine, and it has its physical version. There are such things still. Yeah, just talk about maybe relevant, and because that is really all in insights and information, right?
yeah, we
Friends.
tried to. We started. Now we're at volume 4. We try to put it out every year or every 2 years. At first, we did like top 10 trends of 2016, 2017, but we look back and a lot of them were still relevant. So now we're kind of looking at the entire music or sports or fashion industry and look how these trends are or social trends are affecting the way we're activating or signing new sponsorship agreements.
Yeah.
We also try to have a little bit of science in it, so we call a few university professors to have a distilled version of their papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Good.
yeah, we have a lot of fun doing that.
Ashley, your thought on what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, I mean, Francis, mentioned like kind of that diversification of where brands are spending their money. I mean, you traditionally, like we've always been a traditional, we're invested in sport and that's where we spend most of our dollars. And, we have a lot of these conversations in-house now too. Should we be capitalizing on the festivalization of everything, right? Now that's pre-COVID. We're going to be anti-events for a while, like everyone for the time being, but there's no question. I think sponsorships, for us, the value post-COVID has been huge. I mean, all of our partners have really stepped up, whether they're helping us promote the COVID response fund, which is traditionally not something that we would have gone to our partners for. Or, on Jumpstart, they've all really helped step up from a content creation. They've helped us build a content hub for playing from home, so resources for parents to keep kids entertained. And none of that would have been possible to execute on so quickly. We dropped that in market on March 30th, a week before we dropped the COVID response fund. And we were only able to do it because our partners really stepped up and gave us access to pre-recorded content that they already had. And so, of course, take our content, here's, our Hockey Canada, coach doing skills and drills, 15-minute video. Let's do it. We'll co-brand it Jumpstart and we'll get it out there. And
good example.
So I think, yeah. So I think for me, I think one of the big trends we're seeing is more collaboration, right? Leaning in harder on that true partnership term. Yes, we have a contractual deal. We have assets within that mix.
Of course. You have Schedule A and B, yes.
Schedule A and B, and we're checking the box on making sure we're getting the value from all of those assets. But you have to be so flexible with what's in those deals to react to what the marketplace demands. And I think you're seeing this huge trend with our sponsors really stepping up, being flexible and accommodating to, the growing demands on our business. And we are demanding. We consistently are pushing, trying to do things in a different way. So I think that, and, leaning on our partners to do more in that social responsibility space. That's certainly my bias.
And
I think you see a lot of it.
I imagine a big part of that just boils down to what you said in that example is content creation. It's hardly anything new, but it's become that much more important in a climate where everybody's consuming content in a virtual sense, and they're in front of their devices a lot more. And one thought that has hit me throughout all this is, are we at risk of saturation, right? Like there's just so much, and we're in front of our devices way more. I was talking to a close friend of mine about this over breakfast the other day, that we've lost those downtimes, like that almost, for me, if I was commuting to a meeting, I was free of a device, right? Now it feels like we've got to be very vigilant about stepping away from it, or it could become overwhelming. So those who are putting out content, loads of content, it could be lost in a sea. So you really have to be good at it, right? You have to, it puts a premium on doing it well.
And you have to do it well having your art director, speak through a camera from the computer screen, right? Because you're asking talent for the most part to grab their device and shoot. So,
raw,
it's raw. I mean, I think that's why it's so engaging. I think that's why a lot of it's performing so well, is it's so real.
Yeah.
People love seeing their favorite athletes in their home environment, right?
Yes.
That has traditionally always
I don't. I'm getting sick of seeing them beside that like $1 million backyard landscaping and pool. Yeah.
Well, that's just it, right? I think to your point, like there's a level of privilege that we probably want to, some athletes need to maybe tone down, but you're not wrong. The fatigue, it's there. I think we're there already, and you have to be careful. You have to work harder to do something innovative and different.
That's
and you
the
just
key
have
right
to,
there.
Yeah. And you have to manage expectations, right? Sometimes we did some videos this summer that on our Jumpstart channels that got like 20 views, but you know what? Content lives longer than that moment online. So, it might break 2 months from now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Perfect.
So,
a couple things to wrap on. The first one, I'd be remiss talking to such an iconic brand, and it's such a treat to have you on and representing Canadian Tire. And you've touched so many different sponsorship initiatives. I'll share something that's close to me, and I know it's close to you. The question here will be, I'd love your take on a favorite kind of Canadian Tire sponsorship initiative. But what you've done with the Olympics, and the creative that's emerged from there, and the storytelling and the message of we all play for Canada, really, I thought was a tremendously clever, ownable, strategic positioning to take. But the way you told, and the way you told those stories was magical. The sledge hockey, the parent carrying the kid down to the pond. It gives me goosebumps just even. That was my favorite creative execution of the entire games that I saw. And was that was Pyeongchang, or was that
that was Pyeongchang.
Yeah. So just I'd love your thoughts on your Olympic sponsorship, the way it's manifested, but also just anything else that stood out to you as a favorite thing you guys have done that might not be necessarily as big, but
Yeah, I mean, you just always get goosebumps talking about it, because especially Olympics, the brand spots that are, that's our Strat marketing team, and shout outs to them. Well, those guys have done some amazing work in that space, and it gives you goosebumps still talking about it. So I think, one of the things that's great about Canadian Tire, it's never one person, right? We just have the honor of representing the great work of probably a couple hundred people at the end of the day to bring these things to life. Pyeongchang, I think for me, I go to Olympics as well. When I think the sledge spot with Korea was heartwarming. And I think the reason why it resonated so well was because we've been building on that concept for the last few years. So if you step back and you look at what we did in Rio, that was the wheel spot, right? And it's kids playing basketball, and there's a kid in a wheelchair who can't play.
Yes.
And so the kids all find chairs, and then he can go and join in. And that spot went viral, and made its way around the internet, around the world. But I think for me, and I look at this more as a fan, because it's my counterpart, Daryl Boynton's team on the partnership side, that gets to help bring these to life, and under Kim's leadership. But for me, my favorite moment, really, it's Sochi, when we came out. That's when We All Play for Canada dropped, with Jonathan Taves at the head of it. And they really do talk about the entire community, everyone in his life that helped make him who he was. And that was, and you're dropping some iconic, Canadian story to tell around hockey, Winter Olympics, and you've got Captain Canada at the forefront of it. It's just everything. You check all those boxes. I don't know how often you can hit things out of the park like that. From a brand lens. And I think that actually came to life before I joined the team.
No, that's great. That's great. It's not always, I appreciate people who, it's not always about what we personally built, right? It's admiration for what others built. And there's so
Completely,
much great work
completely.
out there, right?
I think it's pretty rare that it's ever one person, driving
Mhm.
all these pieces, even
Of
though,
course.
yeah, sometimes that's how people
Well,
talk.
the
For
joke, the
sure.
joke I always tell is over the years, and here I am in my office, I'm looking at my um Olympic memorabilia, and one of them is the picture of the golden goal and the Globe and Mail piece that was done. And I was very fortunate to be there in that arena. But I joke how over the years, the attendance at that game will be probably about 300 to 400,000, right?
Yeah,
As everybody will say, they were there. But coming back to, it's the I Am Canadian campaign for Molson. I think
yeah,
I've met about 6 people who have taken credit for it. And like, come
yeah,
on, it's
yeah.
it's a team, right? And
It's a
Francis,
team, and it's all iterative, right? And
yeah,
it grows. I mean, we could talk about creative process a whole other
yeah,
episode too.
exactly.
But yeah, no, and Francis knows this too. He's he gets to work with a few people on our team, but he's met quite a bunch of them, and honestly, I can't say this enough. Like, that's everything. You talk about professional development and advice. Like, surround yourself with amazing people and great talent. All
Well
right.
said. Yeah, and that's probably going to be the close, big part of the close is that's great advice. You're jumping the gun a bit, but
Sorry,
no, it's
I
okay. You're allowed. Guess have free reign, but that's good. Good segue. But before we go there, Francis, any perspective on sponsorship campaigns and initiatives? Could be with with other brands you work with, Canadian Tires.
I'm eager to see the 2020 Olympic
Yes.
spots that we fortunately didn't have the chance to watch yet.
yeah.
Well, I said to you, Ashley, when we spoke, that I was fortunate to be with Kim on the judging panel for the SMAs, and
Hmm.
they're going to be awarded virtually in September. But we met pre-pandemic, and we were sitting together, and she was telling me how excited she is to, the company is to unveil the
It's so
campaign for
good.
both Canadian Tire and for
Sport check.
SportCheck.
Yeah.
And like Francis just said, now I've been chomping at the bit to see it, and I guess it's delayed, and fingers crossed, right?
Heartbreaking.
Yeah,
It's absolutely heartbreaking. I think there's still, even in April, you're still like, is there a faint hope? Come on, Tokyo. Like, it's Japan. If
yeah,
anyone's going to solve a global pandemic,
yeah, exactly.
Japan. And yeah.
No.
But yeah, stay tuned. 2021.
All right, awesome. So let's wrap with professional development advice. So maybe I'll give Kim. Sorry, I'll give Ashley the final word. But Francis, why don't you pipe in?
Yeah, well, you asked us about mentors at the start of the show, and there's a great program with the Sponsorship Council of Canada, the SMCC. It's called Activate. It's
Yes,
a mentorship program that will be held virtually this year. It starts next week, but it's an awesome program.
you are one of the mentors. I've seen the list.
I'm one of the junior ones, but it's
Yeah.
amazing to see the other mentors. The lineup is amazing, and
Yes.
the young professionals are also very impressive. Yeah, that program is amazing. Check it out.
Yeah, I was very fortunate the inaugural one to be one of the mentors, and a lot of good friends, you included, are on that list this year. It's funny. I've been contacted by some of the younger execs who I've been mentoring. I do a fair bit of mentoring. It's very important to me, and I get as much out of mentoring others as they may get. And they've asked me, who should I target? Who should I find and spend time with? I don't know if I mentioned your name yet. I'm kidding. So Ashley, why don't you wrap it up with your thoughts on professional development advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think finding a mentor or mentors, I think you should
Hmm.
try and find a few in your career is so important. I think the program SMCC does is phenomenal. There's such great structure around it. And I've had a few team members on our team participate and have benefited so much from it. It's truly great. The roster
I
of
think
leaders
Daryl
that
is
give their
a
time.
mentor. I think
Yeah.
Daryl's one of them this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is great. I mean,
Yeah.
and like I said, you sing Daryl's praises. I mean, there's no one that knows hockey in this country better than that guy. Yeah, it's a great program. I think, I think touched on this earlier. I think when I talk professional development, it's a lot of, taking the time to really find the right mentors or mentees. But even when you're looking for a job or what that next job could be, it's take your time, do the research. And when you're going on an interview, take the mentality that you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Right?
Yeah. Well said.
It's about finding a fit on both sides of the table. And I think a lot of people don't always necessarily look at things that way. So I think for me, it's always go and look for fit, look for personality fit, look for, word of mouth, ask around. I mean, especially in this industry, everyone knows everyone.
They're doing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Don't be afraid, right? To have a little bit of courage. Yeah.
Have a little bit of courage, ask around, and find a fit with people that are going to be invested in your growth and development too.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for the time and insights. It's been a fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin.
No, this has been great.